better leave, if you know what's good for you. Prepare to die!
Before I get into the review, I just want to take a quick second to talk about how we got here. Galleon was a game I rented for the original Xbox back when I was a kid. So, a few weeks ago, I happened to remember the game existed and wanted to look up some videos of the game for nostalgia. There are some screenshots floating around of later sections of the game, but they lack any context. So I figured I'd just replay the game myself and upload the content here. I think it's a shame there's no footage of the later sections of the game, because some of the stuff in here can get pretty wild, so if anything, this serves as an archive to show people what happens in some of the later areas. You are Rama Sabrier, legendary sea captain and hero. You've sailed to the island of Akbah at the request of Professor Aureliano. He's come across a strange artifact from the Forbidden Seas. You're familiar with the region, and so he'd like you to investigate it for him. You weigh anchor and meet Aureliano's servant, Jabez. You can tell he's up to no good, but not much beyond that at this stage. Jabez takes you to the local supply store to pick up some items for your ship while you wait for Aureliano to arrive. Leaving the store, we're blessed with combat for the first time, as you're ambushed by some hired thugs. Finally, Professor Aureliano arrives and casts Terra Gaia at 5th level to interrupt the fight. We're also introduced to Faith, his daughter.
Captain Rama?
Pleased to meet you.
They lead you back to the Professor's house/mansion to discuss the details of the artifact he called you to investigate. You're brought to a secret cave containing a ship discovered drifting at sea in the area. The architecture is strange, and Aureliano can't place where it came from. So we put our detective pants on and inspect different parts of the ship, gathering evidence before making a final conclusion. This isn't the kind of gameplay you'd expect the game to throw at you, but it's surprisingly fun. I thought this would be part of the core gameplay loop too, but surprisingly this is the only detective section in the entire game. Don't worry though, we haven't seen the last of those little evidence trackers down the bottom. Yeah, I'm looking at you, you piece of shit. Anyway, we learn the real reason we're here. A powerful herb was found on the boat. It hasn't been seen in hundreds of years, and these leaves are fresh. Aureliano wants to find the source and set up a trade route so he can use them to mass produce healing potions for those in need. We agree to set sail in the morning with Aureliano to find the source of the herb. We're sent to bed without dinner for some reason and wake up and, oh no, Jabez is evil. He's attacking Aureliano.
Rama, forget about me. You must stop Jabez. He mustn't get away with the herb. Go over the cliffs. You can catch him on his way out of the cave.
We give chase, but someone's already answered his Yahoo Answers question about Street Fighter inputs, so that's a no-go. You wash up on shore next to your ship. Faith is here and both over the death of her father and desperate to avenge him, so she tags along too. Jabez eats one of the herbs and summons a gust of wind to lose us. We assume he's going to find Calverly the shipmaster because he's the only one who might know where the ship came from. When we arrive at Calverly's island, Rama thinks because we can't see Jabez's ship we must have beaten him there, which is dumb. I mean, the whole point of him eating the herb was to lose us in the first place, so... Anyway, we arrive at Calverly's island, we find a crab, fight the crab, ride the crab, then find out Jabez was already here.
Jabez did get here first.
No. This is the first major difficulty spike of the game. Here we have a boss fight. We're in a cramped space with not much room to move around, there's hazardous terrain, and our boy has a gun. There's a rock pillar that provides some decent cover, but you do have to circle around it, which isn't Rama's first language. You can see where I'm going with this. Okay, so I'm sure it's possible without using pistols, but I have more guns than patience, so I opted out of this fight. I managed to beat the boss, stun-locking him for as much as possible, then playing it safe with the pistols when my health got too low. My thirst for blood not yet sated, I decided to fight some ruffians on this metal beam for a bit. Then in the next room there's this other dude. Now, I'm expecting another gimmick with this guy like McCree back there, and he does have this one move where his eyes glow for a moment, but I stun-locked him for most of the fight and beat it on my first try, so I never figured out what it did. I move on and decide to do some exploring on the boat and shit. I have to fight in this even smaller arena. Don't worry, I'm sure the camera can handle tight spaces. Wait, just 1 sec. Holy shit, who is this guy? No. Anyway, we beat the last of Jabez's lackeys and rescue Faith. She joins your party as the cleric. Faith has the ability to heal wounds using a magic meter she has, and also use her magic to open specific doors. The only way to recover her magic meter is to find these little bugs running around. You can get her to eat them to restore some of her meter. Also, Faith isn't vertically inclined, so you need to direct her to places where you can help her up and down different terrain. This section looks like a puzzle, but really you just have to select the color lever that matches the next color container you need to get to. It is scary though, it constantly looks like you're gonna fall off. Now we have the windmill section. We need to position the boat in a specific way using the windmill so we can reach Calverly's house. This involves going between two sections of the windmill and moving some gears so we can make the changes we need. I also just wanted to note, there's an upper section of the windmill here where if you step foot on it, you're instantly ambushed by what I think is a never-ending wave of enemies. This area isn't out of the way, but it also isn't required. I have no idea why it's designed like this, but I don't recommend coming up here. Once the boat's in place, we're ambushed by Jabez, who kicks us down to a lower section of the windmill and then flies away? Jabez summons these golems. They're defeated by using the tried and true method of mounted combat. You'll see a lot of this. They do try and spice up the scenario by giving you these cannons to play with, which is nice, but they're a bit clunky and leave you vulnerable to attack. So we deal with the golems, Calverly is transformed into a monkey, and Jabez turns the island into a volcano. We make it out and sail after Jabez, but he summons a storm this time and our ship slams against a rock and we're thrown overboard. This is a short linear section swimming up to the beach. For some reason this is an entire game chapter, there's even level stats for it and everything. Once we make it ashore, we pass out on the beach and then wake up in prison. All our weapons and items are gone too. Faith has been kidnapped again. We get some lore on Rama attacking this rich asshole slave ships, which I think is the only evidence we have that Rama did anything before the events of the game. Now we fight some martial arts lady who did 8 years of training hitbox evasion. Just fucking... It took me a minute to realize I had to grapple her to remove the tag controlling her. This is where the game starts to fall apart a bit on a technical level. Some of the cutscenes don't load properly and will hang on certain frames for ages or even crash the game. We free Miyoko and team up with her against the giant turtle monster. We defeat the prison beast and our reward is this broken cutscene, which I'm kinda glad didn't work because it leaves so much to the imagination.
My apologies. Don't be concerned.
This is a crash, by the way, so I redid the turtle fight. We defeat the turtle a second time and alright, I'll just grab those keys. So we navigate these lion cages for a while, then we make it to the Beastmaster. This is a tough fight. The trick is to get the Beastmaster stuck on the stairs. The hitboxes are a bit wonky on uneven surfaces, so it's a good chance to get some free hits in while dodging some attacks. Still though, this is probably the hardest fight in the game and by far took me the longest. Eventually we defeat him and make our way into the deepest section of the area to grab the keys. Then we hit up some Stairfu with this tiger on the way out. With the keys we can now unlock a new section of the prison. Here we fight another turtle monster for a while. There's some bones. I don't know. We finally make our way outside, and to be honest, this is the most impressive the game was on a visual level. After crawling through that oppressive dungeon for an hour, just walking out and seeing the vast ocean with blues and greens, it was really nice. We're even treated to some gameplay in more open areas for a bit. There's still some cave sections, but nothing like what we just went through. This is the point in the game where I just started avoiding combat outright. Between the lack of healing items and wanting to progress through the story, the combat was a waste of time at best and a waste of healing at worst. We've now reached a fort at the top of the island. Faith is here, so we'll need to pick her up before moving on. We're actually coming up to my favourite section of the game. There are large surrounding areas where you can really pick up a lot of speed, and it's fun jumping around like this. Plus, once you reach the fortress, the layout is actually pretty open. You can kinda jump to areas it feels like you're not supposed to go to, which while they are intended is pretty cool. So we free our men and grab a log and Rama decides this castle killed his father or something.
Let's tear this castle apart!
Okay, here's where it starts to go to shit. I really hate these sections where they set up this lengthy task you're about to have to do. I wouldn't even mind doing it if they didn't set it up like a chore list. It just feels like they're padding for time even though the stuff you're doing to get the keys is genuine gameplay. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. Alright, so for the first key we're headed into this tower. We'll catapult up, then it's a race to the bottom before the building collapses. This is the first section that really shows off the two greatest weaknesses in Rama's mobility. Moving quickly and moving in tight spaces. I died so many times during this section to accidentally grabbing this ledge and then having firefighter Sabriere decide he'd rather douse the flames with his charisma, which to be fair sounds about right. Anyway, we reach the bottom and our reward is another broken cutscene. Luckily, this time the game saved just after the cutscene, so we don't have to run back down the tower again. We struggle with the controls for a bit, but we make it out and save Miyoko.
Miyoko!
Onto the second key. It's not entirely intuitive, but you can interact with these earrings to have the head of this statue collapse into the bath below. This opens an underwater section. We swim around for a bit and make it to the most bullshit puzzle in the entire game. Now we move up to the harem room at the top of the tower.
Death to he who looks upon the harem of my master.
Whatever.
Beat the cuck into submission and obtain the second key. We also free Calverly, who was forced to but now chooses to wear this dress. The third key is by far the easiest. It just requires a bit of messing with some levers in this hook to rip the door off. Now that we've got the third key in hand, we can meet back up with Miyoko and move on to the final section. Here we have to defeat some goons and play the floor as lava for a bit. We climb up to the top and defeat the War Master and Miyoko's former captor. We get the final key, I get lost for a bit, then we make our way onto the last section.
Don't come any closer, Captain. I can't imagine what you see in this girl. She is far too headstrong. What you need is an obedient woman.
And what you need are some manners. Now let her go.
I don't think so. Drop your weapons on that table, or I'll kill her.
By this point I've had enough of this place, and it looks like the game wants me to fight this guy with my bare hands while not letting Faith take too much damage. So I unloaded every pistol I had collected up until this point. Man, that felt good. Anyway, the other evil guy escapes, or whatever. I'm pretty numb to it all at this point, I'm just ready for it to be over. So we finally get to talking with Calverly, and he gives us a hint of where we need to go next.
Ankon, Epheremy.
We now arrive at Ankon, and this is where the game takes a turn for the fantastical. For the most part, everything stays the same gameplay-wise, although we're heading into some of the most frustrating parts of the game. We do see some bizarre elements of the story start to rear their heads. This is kind of refreshing. We start this level off with a water section. Well, you're supposed to go to shore first and investigate the giant robot, but I got distracted and saw some stuff under the surface, so we'll start here first. The section is frustrating, but thankfully short. You'll swim through the area looking for missing parts to repair the robot. Normally you'd have the icons down the bottom left to indicate how close you are to an item, but that doesn't appear until after you investigate the robot, so we'll make do without them for now. The other annoying part is that since we're underwater, air is a problem. The game proudly announces a solution to this problem though. Miyoko has the ability to restore air similar to how Faith can restore health. Okay, great. I'm starting to run low on air, so I'll have Miyoko use her new ability and... Oh no. There's also a section where you need to swim into a shipwreck to get one of the pieces. I didn't mention this before, but the swimming in this game is similar to how something like a flight sim would work. The game will attempt to keep your camera level with the horizon, but only after you stop moving. So, not super helpful. This underwater section is only about 15 minutes long though, so we'll just move on. Okay, so we've collected all the pieces of the robot. I'm sure you can tell what's coming next. We have a giant monster battle, toss the dinosaur into the volcano, and then we're free to explore the ruins of Ankon. Jabez is having trouble finding his way to Ankon, so he turns some monkeys into these bat gargoyle things and sends them off to find the island. Meanwhile, we're stuck in yet another cramped dungeon. The days of large open areas to move around in are basically over at this point in the game, with the exception of one area a little bit closer to the end, but that has its own problems that I'll get to. Our goal for the moment is to restore power so we can open the giant door at the end of the room and make our way further inside. Our first puzzle is in this library where we need to make it to the end and retrieve a key for one of the doors in this area. This is one of the most frustrating platforming sections the game throws at you. The cycles of the two moving platforms don't match up either, so you'll need to be really patient in finding the right moment to jump without missing. There's also a chance you'll jump too close to the ceiling and Rama will decide to Spider-Man stick to the roof and then fall back down to the bottom. If you do happen to fall, then climbing back up is this annoying ritual where it looks like you should be able to get back up in a jump or two, but instead you slip and slide all over the walls and have to carefully line up each jump. Next up is this giant tree in the middle of the room. We found a key laying around that lets us enter the inner sanctuary where we get a leaf of the magical herb for ourselves. We throw the herb into one of the generators, and this restores power back to the second half of the area. We can now move on to the next section. Oh, gotcha. It shorts out the cylinder, and we'll have to find a replacement. Okay. We make our way into the fire room. I can only imagine this is where the ancient civilization kept their fire in times of need? What am I even saying? We grab the key, unlock a new room, grab a cylinder, replace the cylinder, fix the power again. Now we can activate the main door. And since I was so sick of combat at this point, I opted to just not fight any of the dinosaurs on my way here. So you're welcome for this next part.
It work?
Now we're in this map room. We're trying to find the location of Epheremy and find the source of the magical herb, but before we can get the information we need to use this crazy machine. Now initially it does nothing, but if you do some exploring you'll find there's a hidden room where we can move this boulder and restore power to the system. With power restored we can now interact with these buttons and have the funny man say different phonetics. We have some symbols on the back wall to start with, and if we talk to Faith, Rama will ask her to remind him of the name of the island they're looking for.
Epheremy.
So let's start with the symbols on the back wall for starters. These two look right, but when I press them nothing happens. Okay, let's skip the wall for now and just try spelling Epheremy by sounding it out and...
Epheremy.
Still nothing? This is probably the most abstract puzzle in the game, and I'm certain there are others who would have figured it out before me, but let's unveil the mystery, shall we? You need to press all the buttons for the word at the same time. So I put the code in, the hologram tells me the law of the land, we chuck Epheremy in for good measure, the head tells me the land is forbidden, not to approach lest I be attacked, and then also the exact location of the island. We sail for the island of Epheremy ourselves, and here we are in another storm. This time, Faith casts some sort of anti-storm spell, these wizards accept our challenge and let us onto the land. Then they start talking over the top of each other and agree that all three of us will face the challenge.
This is one of the forbidden
They have drawn their weapons. This is a challenge for sorcery. They have drawn their sorceries.
So the wizards will talk to us, but only after we complete the challenge. The challenge is to reforge this statue using all of the gems that have now been scattered between these two rooms. We're now presented with two self-contained sections, each with a gimmick. We can move freely between them. Even though these sections are way longer than they need to be, I'll keep them brief as they're mostly repetitive and we're approaching the end of the game here. First is what I'll call the shrink area. It's a small forest area with a building. The idea is you find the Ring of Transformation, then have Faith use it to make you tiny. You swim through a pipe section in these small pools of water and emerge on the other side of a door you previously couldn't open. Once inside, you can trick this golem into smashing the buttons to open the door so you can retrieve the gems once you return to full size. First though, we need to free the gems from these cages. For the most part, these are a few mostly bearable platforming sections. These moving handles can be a bit bullshit, and it feels like any wrong move could send you back to the floor, but in fairness it never happened, at least for me. So we free the gems, return to normal, grab them, realize one is missing, go small again, get the last gem, and now we can move on to the final trial. The wind area. This is by far the most annoying section of the entire game. At this point we've exhausted our limited supply of healing items, either through combat, falling, or getting hit during cutscenes. And the gimmick for this area is there are strong updrafts of wind, along with floating islands and debris we need to climb up onto that will move around. There are two rings in this level, so let's just focus on getting the first one. The first ring is the water ring. It lets us activate these platforms to create vertical tubes of water that we can swim through to get some height. Now that we have this, we can use it to obtain the second ring, the air ring. This lets us activate platforms to get a temporary boost to our jump. We can use these to get to new areas or to shortcut back to old ones. So now we just follow the flashing icons down the bottom and clean up the rest of the gems. I'm making this sound way more simple than it was. The wind section alone took me an hour and a half to get through. We obtain the final wind gem, then Jabez arrives on the island. It's been a while since he last consumed the herb and he won't last much longer without it. He threatens to burn this tree sapling, which is needed to cross-pollinate the sacred tree and save it, unless the wizards take him to where it is. So they agree and take him up to the last remaining sacred tree. We leave and repair the broken statue. This lets us access the upper plateau. We need 4 people to activate the platforms so we can get access to the sacred tree. So Faith creates a golem that we can give one of our elemental rings to. The floating island comes down, we go in and have a rematch against Jabez's lackeys from back on Calverly's island. We defeat them and head for the tree. During all this, Jabez has cross-pollinated the tree and it sprouted new buds. He consumes them and then kills the wizards. He then traps your companions in the Zabaza bubble and starts to lose control of his power. Then, and this caught me out of nowhere, you have 9 seconds to choose whether Miyoko or Faith die. Whoever you don't choose to save in this section fucking dies. The other funny thing is that who you do choose here effectively becomes Rama's canon girlfriend. Super weird. Anyway, it's time for the final fight. Jabez has become this giant goat monster thing so that we can have another grapple boss. Rama is as pissed at the sequence of events as I am and gets like really mad.
Came here to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. Now help me kill it.
Can't. It's too much.
Rubbish! Think of something!
I can pass you my strength as you fight. The power of the storms.
Yes.
Okay, the boss has 3 main abilities. The first is he will roll into a ball, leave the arena, and rain down meteors. The second is this breath move that deals substantial damage if you get caught in it. And the third is this barrage of explosive blasts. Once you find an opening, you jump onto his back and stab this section that's missing a spike. After that, he summons these thorny vines to stop you from reaching his human form that's now been exposed. Do this 3 times, and now we've beaten the game.
She sacrificed herself to save you.
We mourn the death of our companion, and then we're given a parting gift by one of the wizards. A seed from a sacred tree. She uses this to revive whoever you failed to save at the start of the fight. Then we get some monologue about how the tree's power is too great and turns the hearts of man or whatever. You also get this shot of all the treasure you've collected across your adventure, which is nice, I guess. So that was Galleon. The game had some interesting ideas going on, and a lot more charm than I would have expected going in, but it's just too bogged down by technical issues, design flaws, and poor controls for me to recommend to anyone. But if for some reason you can look past all that, just know that it will test your patience, especially after the midpoint. Well, that's it. I'm glad to be able to shed some light on particularly the later sections of this game, so that anyone looking for a nostalgia hit like me has a place to go. I'd like to do more of this kind of thing in future, but for now I'm tired and kind of hungry, so I'm off. I'll catch you next time.